So this is the first in a short series of videos to crash course Photoshop. We're not going to be going into anything deep, we're just going to be able to do the basic core fundamentals, taking images in, getting the best out of photographs that are a bit dull or the colour's not quite right, do a little bit of a tweak, through to basic compositions, cropping, isolating things, so if it's on a table, getting rid of the background so it's just in a white background, through to compositing models and maquettes onto photographs of locations so you can get an idea of what something would be in context. Now this is going to be over a series of videos and this is just the first. So this one's you're going to be looking at the workspace and the core fundamentals of what Photoshop is and what it does. Now Photoshop is a really expansive program. It can do anything you can imagine with 2D images, and because of that it can be a bit daunting. You can lay the workspace out in different ways for different activities. We can move stuff around and customize where things are and how they're laid out. And this can sometimes lead to a situation where things get lost or closed and you don't know where things are. So one of the first things you want to be able to do is to reset the workspace itself so it looks like what I'm demonstrating to you and to what's familiar. So if we go to the drop-down menus at the top, we'll find Window, Workspace, and ensure Essentials is selected, and if it is and it isn't familiar, hit reset and I'll take it back to stock. So let's look at the core areas. Well, Photoshop has lots of different panels, and panels work a bit like tabs in a web browser. Over here we have the toolbar. This toolbar is where we get all of the different functions that allow us to work within one of our images. Every tool that is there, if we hover over it, it will tell us what the tool is called and give us a brief animation giving you an idea of what it does. Every tool we select changes this top bar here to give us options relating specifically to that tool. This central area is where your canvas or your digital image will be displayed, and over on this side on the right usually we have panels that relate to different activities such as layers or your color swatch, or quite importantly your history. Now these panels we can switch between them and we can minimize to make them a little bit less cluttered. And if there's something you're looking for that isn't here, if you go to the window drop-down menu, there's a long list of all the different panels that we can get access to. But these core ones are the ones that we're interested in today, namely layers and the history. Now one of the most important things about layers to know is they're hierarchical. And that's just a fancy way of saying what's on the top obscures what's beneath. In the exact same way that sheets of paper lie on your desk, the one that's on top is the one you see. But layers aren't like sheets of paper. They're more like sheets of acetate. They're transparent. And any image information, like a bit of painting or drawing or image, will sit on that layer. And anything where there's no visual information is transparent. This allows us to separate an image out into different parts and then move them around individually with each other to give us a greater degree of control. So to demonstrate that, I have this beautiful composition of these three shapes, and the one that's most prominent is the red triangle, which is on top. We have this green square shape and this blue circular shape beneath, each on its own layer. The layer on top obscures the layers below. If I hide a layer with the eye, then I can see what's beneath. But if I change the layer order by clicking and dragging, it will also change the order of what I can see. If I take a layer and I take the Move tool, I can move the layer I have selected around. And again, change the layout and how everything looks. Any adjustments I make will only affect the layer I have selected. So if I want to affect the blue circle, for example, I have to ensure I have the blue circle selected. So if I select the blue circle layer, I can take my paintbrush tool, choose a different color. I can paint that on and it will go beneath the other elements because they are on higher layers. If I want to paint on the green square and I have the blue layer selected, it won't work because it's on a lower layer. So always ensure you have the correct layer selected for what you want to actually do. Now my background layer is locked. There's not a lot I can do with it. It's like a hard base to ensure that there's something in the background at least. But I can hide it. And if I hide it, I get this checker pattern. And this checker pattern is telling me that there's nothing there. It's transparent, it's invisible. That checker pattern is Photoshop's way of letting you know there's no visual there. Now that can be quite useful sometimes, but a lot of the time it just lets us know that actually there's nothing there. We might want to put something in the background that isn't just plain white. To create new layers, we go to the layer drop-down menu and we go new layer. And we can put it to a new position or take a new color. We'll take our paintbrush tool and we can draw another shape. And again, with our move tool, we can move that around and it won't affect what's on the lower layers. So this is a great way of separating our image out. For those of you who've done screen printing or any kind of analog print processes, these separations and layers will be quite familiar because they're exactly the same concept. We break the image up, separate the elements out, putting them gradually smaller, but we don't necessarily have to put lighter on top or darker beneath. We can do it in any way we want, but the layers allow us to separate those parts of the image out. With your layers, we also have these eyes that make them visible or invisible. So if you're wanting to work on a single part, you can hide the parts that aren't important for that edit you're about to make, and it helps you work on something in isolation. As well as working with something in isolation, it's really important to see clearly what you're doing. So for that, we typically want to be able to zoom in and zoom out from our canvas. We get a clearer look at the element we're working on at any given time. To do that, the shortcut key is Control plus or minus next to numerical keys, or Command plus or minus if you're on a Mac. I can zoom in, and if you hold down your space bar, get this little hand tool and allows you to click and drag to move your canvas around. You're just grabbing it and pulling it to one side. So you can get to the area you want, and then ensure that you have the layer selected you're working on, and then you can make your adjustments. Beautiful. And then once you're finished, bring everything back. This is a great way of working with less distraction. If you're working individual element, you can just hide out peripheral details. You can focus really clearly on the part you want. To delete a layer, simply select the layer you don't want, and down at the bottom, you'll see there's a little trash can. And if we click that, it'll ensure that you want to delete that layer, because once it's gone, and then hit yes. Next up, we have the history. The history is the log of everything you've been doing. So if you are doing lots of little brush strokes, every time you click and move the mouse or your cursor, it'll create a log that you've done that. Now, if you do something that you don't like, the history allows you to step back to a certain point in your composition to where you were happy with it, basically. We'll find our history up here. If we select that, you'll see here is all the edits and adjustments I have made. So I can go back to an earlier stage if I like, and I can go to any point in my composition's history. So if I like that at a certain point, then I can take it to that point and leave it. So it's a really powerful tool if I'm working and I'm not happy with an adjustment or edit I've made, I can always step back. So really important tool, get into the habit of using it. Once you've finished with a composition, we have to be able to save it. Now, Photoshop files are very particular types of image files. So if we save a Photoshop file, we can only watch it in Photoshop. Now, Photoshop files are a very particular type of image file. It saves all that layer information for a start. So if we want to look at it, we have to use Photoshop. Therefore, we also, if we want to be able to put it online, for example, we need to be able to save it as a flattened image, like a JPEG. So let's look at that. If we go to the File drop-down menu, we have an option to Save As. And where it says Format Set as Photoshop, we can open that. We get a large selection of options for different types of image file. The most common being JPEG, the one you'd be most familiar with. So I can select that. And then I can hit Save. And it gives me options in the quality, and there's no reason why with a JPEG the quality wouldn't be pulled up to the top every time. So we'll do that and hit OK. Now sometimes when you're working for your layers, we have need to merge them together or flatten the image into a single locked element. Now when you merge layers, we can't unmerge them. They're locked. We've kind of like printed it in digitally and they're all now stuck together. So we don't do this very often, apart from when we absolutely have to, when we're finished with elements, and to bring them together. To merge elements or flatten layers, select the layers you want to merge, go to the Layer drop-down menu, and you have options such as Merge Layers, Merge Visible, or Flatten the entire image. Now, flattening the entire image basically compresses it like a JPEG. It's now a single thing. We can't break any of those layers apart ever again. Merging visible and merging layers is the same, but not for the whole image. We decide what parts we want to do. So I'm going to merge layers, and it'll merge the layers I had highlighted. Merge visible does the exact same thing. It just does with every layer you can see. So if you hide some, then they're not going to be merged into it. So now I can move those shapes up and down, but I can never again bring the blue circle, as beautiful as it is, to the top. So that was layers and the history and saving images out. The next video is going to cover so that was layers and the history. Now the next video is going to cover cutting elements out of an image and creating fresh layers with them, and also isolating elements from a larger image by themselves using selection tools.